It's the Hog Sty.
Welcome back to the Hog Sty, Washington's absolutely unofficial leading source for all things Redskins and the NFL. If you're not following us on social media, you're not going to know what's going on, so make sure you do that on Twitter at the Hog Sty and on Facebook at facebook.com/HailToTheHogs for all your breaking news. In the meantime, my name's Sean Conti, Robbie Duncan's in the house,
What's going on?
Steve Thomas is in the house,
Howdy, howdy.
and we are very excited. Oh, and also, lest we forget, Kelly Worrell and Alex East will be back with us next week, stronger than ever.
We can't forget Kelly and Alex.
No.
Exactly. This is part of our intrepid crew. But anyways, in the meantime, the three of us are super excited to present you with the Hog Sty post pre-draft special. We're ready to go over all the draft picks we got in our first draft under general manager Scott McLuhan. We're going to play Dead On or Dead Off. That's a game where Robbie's going to give us his patented grade, dead right or dead wrong, for each pick, and at the end we'll tally that up and see if the draft as a whole was dead right or dead wrong. But before we do that, I don't know, guys, what do you think? Any general thoughts about the draft? I mean, I think it was pretty much as to be expected.
Man, it was draft day all weekend, and I loved it. That for all you draft geeks out there, it was like Christmas, and I gotta say, I enjoyed it. I didn't do anything but watch it, and I was pretty happy with our draft overall. Scott promised us that we'd be bigger, stronger, and meaner, and we certainly did that with this draft.
Yeah, certainly, the Redskins draft, we got bigger, stronger, and meaner, like you said. I don't know how many, Redskin Ring of Fame players we have in this draft, maybe. Sheriff, maybe, I guess. But overall, I thought it was very positive. Most importantly, I think we had players who are going to be contributors on this team for years to come, which is a welcome change from the nonsense and garbage we've had for years.
Mm-hmm.
But from the perspective of the NFL as a whole, I thought it was a very interesting draft in that I don't think there's too many superstars in this draft. Neither of the two quarterbacks at the top, Winston or Mariota, in my opinion, are going to lead a team to the Super Bowl. I think Winston has flaws. He was sort of the number one by default, in my opinion. He's pro ready, from the perspective of the style he played at Florida State, but he threw a lot of interceptions. He had a lot of comebacks in the fourth quarter, but that was largely because he put his team in a hole in the first half. So I question his on-the-field decision-making, and I certainly question his off-the-field decision-making, given the litany of nonsense that this kid has put Florida State through over, the past 2 years. And in terms of Mariota, I just can't help think that Mariota is a lesser version of Robert Griffin. He's
Right.
About the same size, maybe a little bit bulkier, certainly slower, not as strong an arm. Played in a system that's, not a pro-style system, a lot like Robert Griffin. And, we all love Griffin here, or some of us do. But whatever Griffin is, I think Mariota is the same thing. And the rest of these guys at the top of the draft, all these outside linebackers, I wasn't a fan in the first place, as both of you know, partly because, they all had flaws. A lot of them were speed rushers with no moves. In the case of Fowler may have been a more complete player, but he's not exactly a dominant edge rushing, quarterback killer either. I thought maybe the most complete player in the whole draft might have been Amari Cooper, just because his routes are so smooth. Such a quality receiver. But outside that, and maybe Leonard Williams, outside that, I'm not sure this draft overall had the quality that some of the drafts in years past had.
That's for sure. And
Yeah, I would agree. I was looking it up. I guess one of the stats they flashed during the draft was this was the sixth time, I think, since '67 that that quarterbacks have gone 1 and 2, and it certainly seems to me like the
here's
weaker, of the
here's
of the
another
classes.
stat for you. There were only 7 quarterbacks drafted in this past draft. That was the least amount of quarterbacks in the past, 6 or 7 years. I forget the number exactly, but it was the very thin quarterback class. A lot of receiver.
that's what there's. Yeah, a lot of. I was gonna say that's what they've been saying all off season. Just not a very strong class overall at quarterback. Just I don't know. It's weird.
Well, Well, they went 1-2 anyway, and then Fowler, of course, went third to the Jaguars. Raiders bit on Cooper. He's a good player, definitely, so I could see that. A lot of people surprised. This is a good seg into the number 5 pick. A lot of people surprised. Some people not so much surprised. I think Steve and I wanted this all along. But the Skins, they failed to garner a trade offer that's worth giving up the number 5 pick and instead take Brandon Sheriff, the guard out of Iowa, 6'5", 319. We're going to play him at tackle, obviously. I wanted it. Steve wanted it. I think it was a good pick. But Robbie, I got to go to you. Dead right or dead wrong?
And we cut there, right?
I think,
or we keep going.
Well, you kind of did just cut.
I think we... yeah. I think
well, yeah, I thought we were going into the first... Are we talking the first pick and then going into the second round?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Okay.
I was assuming we were going to talk about Sheriff again, but
okay.
But I don't
just
know.
do it again. Let's talk about Sheriff and then cut it.
Yeah.
And if nothing else, Alex can pick the best one or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. True.
That's a good point.
Okay, so I'll do it one more time. But that's a perfect segue into the number 5 pick. The Skins fail to garner a trade offer that I guess is worth giving up the number 5. So instead, they go with the guard out of Iowa, Brandon Sheriff, 319, 6'5". Steve and I wanted this all along. We're obviously going to play him at tackle. I think some people were not so convinced, but I got to ask you, Robbie, dead right or dead wrong on Sheriff?
Dead right. We greatly improved our offensive line by picking him. It for sure was a surprise that we passed on Leonard Williams due to him being the best player in the draft, but really, you think about it, investing the 5th overall pick in a lineman that's going to improve your offensive line in general with just how he plays and his attitude, I think that's definitely worth the 5th overall pick.
Yeah, I think so, and I'll just digress briefly, by the way, and just to take this opportunity to laugh at the Dallas Cowboys for picking a drug addict in round 2 and Randy Gregory. But that aside, I had to get it in. I just couldn't let it go. But anyway, Sheriff, what to me the beauty of Brandon Sheriff is that he can play multiple positions for us at a high level. If either we get another right tackle in somehow who's a better right tackle, we just slide him over to right guard. That is the beauty of, I think, Brandon Sheriff.
Yeah, he's going to make that line better regardless of where he plays. And people say, oh, he's not a right tackle. Fine, that's not a big deal. If he doesn't work out at right tackle, it's not the end of the world. He'll move right to guard and be a hell of a guard. Because if you look at him on film, everything he does is naturally like a guard, just how a guard would play in his kick steps and his technique. It all looks like a guard. But with Callahan being the head O-line coach, I think it could work out with him being a right tackle. Sheriff's a very determined. He's got a good demeanor about him. He's very tough and physical. I think he'd take Callahan's coaching like a sponge and just absorb it. So if it doesn't work out, not the end of the world. He'll just move to guard and be a beast there.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's really not like he has any competition at either position.
No.
Tackle or guard.
Either way, we have a hog
him
and
in day
hallelujah.
one.
Yeah.
Hallelujah.
Yes, I agree.
All right, so that's the first pick. It gets a dead right grade from the Hog Sty. Let's move down to the next pick. Round 2, the 6th pick, that would be 38th overall. The Skins take defensive end Preston Smith. This one, okay, so he's 6'5", 271 out of Mississippi State. This one, I guess he was introduced actually as a linebacker, though, just by the nature of our defense. And it makes sense, I think, if you look at our depth chart. But what's your take on that, Robbie? First of all, I guess, dead right or dead wrong?
At first, I was kind of like, we let some good talent get away from us. But when I went and looked at him on film and kind of studied up on him, I think it's a dead right pick. He's very big. He's 6'5", about 270, maybe a little bit more than that. But he's huge. You look at him on film, he's a man among boys out there. He's huge.
Mm-hmm.
He plays really physical, really strong. He's not a dynamic pass rusher off the edge. He won't beat anybody with speed, but he'll beat him with power and with actually pretty good technique in using his hands against the linemen. But I like it. He's going to be a good player for us. Plus, we can move him all over the place.
I heard his. Yeah,
That's
I heard
what I was
his
gonna ask
mama.
you.
I
Sorry,
heard his
go ahead,
mama
Steve.
calls him Trent Murphy when he's at home. And he goes, "Hey Trent, come here, come here to breakfast." He looks like Trent Murphy, honestly.
Size and body wise.
Well,
for sure.
yeah, and how he plays. We heard, last year that we didn't hear, we saw that Trent was more of a run stopper, maybe not a dynamic pass rusher like he was in college. It seems to me that Preston Smith is Trent Murphy, only just a smidgen bigger and a smidgen more athletic and a smidgen stronger. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think so. But the way you compare the two of them as well is when Murphy is rushing the passer, he's actually more finesse than he is a power rusher. He uses his hands. He is very good with his hands and other techniques like that. And he also plays with good leverage, but he doesn't work a mean bull rush or try to overpower a lineman. That's the difference between him and Preston Smith. Preston Smith, he's very physical in his pass rush, relentless.
I think both you guys know that I've been vehemently opposed to drafting an outside linebacker at the top of the draft for a while, and the reason is Trent Murphy, and I wasn't totally thrilled with Trent Murphy's selection last year, but from my perspective, we have this second-round draft pick. Our goal ought to be second-round draft picks to start and be long-term starters. And I have nothing against Preston Smith. I accept your view of him, Robbie, and it seems to me he's a good player. But at the same time, what we've done is thrown Murphy on the trash heap. He's not going to be a starter. Tell me I'm wrong. I'm all ears.
No, I don't think you're wrong. But one thing that was interesting during Gruden's press conference, not long after Smith was picked, they were talking about maybe moving Murphy to defensive end in a 3-4, which is pretty interesting because he's got the big body for it. He has a big frame. He'd need to add on some more pounds because you want your DNs in a 3-4 to be more like 290, close to 300.
Right.
But, if that could happen, that'd be a pretty interesting move.
Well, it would be interesting.
He's a pretty decent pass rusher,
It would
too.
be interesting, except for the fact that we just signed Paya and we have Jason Hatcher as our ends.
Right.
Look, I wish I could have seen Gruden say that quote because it sure looked to me like he was kind of fishing. It looked to me like somebody said, okay, now that the question was something to the effect of, Jay, you just drafted Preston Smith. What on earth are you going to do with Trent Murphy? And Jay goes, well, maybe we can move him to defensive end. That's how it read. That's what was going through my head as I read the quote on paper.
Yeah, and they're definitely going to be on the field at the same time, and maybe not every play, but especially when you get in the third and longs and pass rushing situations, you look at Preston Smith on film. They moved him down to nose guard at times. You can mix them around. I don't think it's necessarily just the end of Trent Murphy. He probably won't be the immediate starter, but he'll definitely still be in the mix.
Well, now what about a 3? Oh, I'm sorry, Sean. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say you could almost say they went for versility with both their first picks in the draft because it sounds like either one of these guys could kind of be moved back.
Now, what about a 4-3 set though? We've all the coaching staff has said we're not going to stay in a 3-4 necessarily all the time. Is Trent a 4-3 defensive tackle perhaps?
Trent, yeah, I think he could be, and when we go to those 4-3 fronts, you could even move Preston Smith to D tackle. He's big enough and strong enough to do it. It's just so interesting how you have all these versatile guys that can be moved around. I'm not sure Trent's as versatile as Preston Smith is, but I'm pretty intrigued with what they can do with him.
Did you give a dead right or dead wrong? By the way, what was your dead?
I said dead right. I think it's a good pick.
The last thing I was going to say about Preston Smith before we move on to the next pick is just that it tells me, it seems counterintuitive, but it tells me that they had a tremendous amount of faith in Sheriff, because if you were saying that you had a pass rusher was a need for your team and you left the best one on the board without taking him, it tells me they really wanted to bolster that right tackle position and take Sheriff.
That's a good point.
Because I think it's a major drop off between Williams to Preston Smith. Not anything against the guy, but
Leonard Williams isn't necessarily a pass rusher in the same mold as an elite edge rusher. He's not Julius Peppers. He's more of an inside interior lineman, isn't he, Robbie?
Yeah, he is. But he's a really good pass rusher as a D tackle, DN 3-4 guy.
Yeah, but he's not an edge rusher, and so he's not Preston Smith. I mean, Preston Smith is an outside linebacker, and Leonard Williams is a lot of things, but he's not an outside linebacker.
All right. Well, let's keep moving along here. We're down to the third round now. Skins picked 31. That's 95th overall. I guess this was a trade from the Seahawks, and we ended up with Matt Jones, running back out of Florida, 6'2", 231, big bruiser guy, downhill style, big specimen. Kind of surprising to me, but Robbie, what do you think? Dead on, dead off?
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a dead wrong pick. Just because it wasn't really expected. I think he's going to be a good back for us, but the value for him in the third round, a lot of people had him in like the 6th. You could have had him later.
Wow.
I think he's going to be a good guy for us, but I'm going to give the pick itself a dead wrong. The good things about him, he's a big bruiser. He's 6'2", 230 plus, and he's actually a really good pass blocker. You watch him on film, he loves to pass block, which reminds me of a certain running back that we used to have here that loved to pass block, Clinton Portis. And he takes great pride in being a good pass blocker, which is good. So a very good chance that, if he stays consistent in pass blocking for us, he very well may be our third down back. Not the change of pace back that we expected to get, but he's going to be pretty reliable on third down, I think.
Yeah, go ahead. Paul.
Yeah, go ahead. Well, I was just going to say, I'm kind of surprised. I think Jay Ajayi was still on the board at this point. That was who I had slotted. If the Skins were going to take a running back that early, that's who I figured they were going to go for. But yeah, this was a surprise to me. I don't know. He's an Almo-style runner, and he doesn't exactly, like you were saying, fill the void left.
Yeah, I don't think he's a third down. My first impression, let me back up. My first impression was that this guy is just not a third down back at all. What I
he's not
envision
your
of
prototypical third down back with the speed and all.
Yeah, but it's the pass pro. I think probably that the coaching staff saw how just dreadful all of our running backs, including Alfred Morris, were with the pass protection on the obvious passing downs last year. And so my thought was that when Jay said he could be a third down back, maybe he's thinking more of pass pro than anything else. When I think of third down back, I think of the change of pace back, the guy who's maybe a little faster, who can do something on the screen pass or the swing pass to the outside. Right. And that's not this guy. I noticed in the press conference at I guess it was at the stadium, not Redskins Park, about right after the draft, that Jones said he thought he could catch passes. Famous last words. We've heard that a lot. We've heard that from Alfred Morris, and he's not that good at it.
Right.
He didn't get a lot of catches at Florida, but he has shown that he can be a decent pass catcher. I mean, I don't think they'd expect him to be like a LaShawn McCoy type, receiving back, but he can definitely, catch the screen and get 10 yards for the first down or something for us.
Yeah, at 6'2", 231, he really reminds me of the running back Jacobs from the Giants, a few years ago.
Yep.
And they had the
right.
I can't remember who their little guy was back then, but they had a Thunder and Lightning thing going.
It was Mod Bradshaw, I think.
Yeah.
No, Tiki Barber.
Yeah, it was Tiki Barber. But Jones strikes me as the guy who maybe can get us a couple yards on the goal line. He's about Mike Sellers' size, maybe 10 pounds lighter, maybe. The other thing that went through my head is I wonder if Darrell Young needs to be nervous in terms of the fullback job with Matt Jones around. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know about actual fullback job, but in third down back, yeah. I mean, because Darrell Young is probably our best back before Matt Jones that could pass block, and that's Matt Jones probably will take that over. I don't know.
I don't want to deviate from the draft too much here, but just as a side venture, I really think a lot of Darrell Young. I think he's the classic football player, competitor type. He's always done very well when he's got his opportunities. He's been a great lead blocker when given opportunities. I really wondered last year what exactly Jay Gruden had against Darrell Young. He told us in the offseason or the last offseason, that the reason he didn't use his fullbacks in Cincinnati is he didn't have a guy that had the talent of Darrell Young, which seemed good. But then he didn't really use him very much last year. I was really confused about it.
Yeah, no, we were much more in the business of trying we were much more in the business of trying the same goal line run up the middle with Alfred Morris 3 times in a row, forgetting you had a fullback at all. That's the business that we were in last year, it seemed to be. I agree. It seemed like Jay was constantly forgetting he had Darrell Young even on the team.
Yeah, Jay was, in my opinion, constantly making poor play calls. But that's a whole other discussion for a whole other day.
Yeah.
Didn't mean to deviate too much.
No, he's a player
point
to root for sure.
Yeah. Well, moving right along then, we're down to the 4th round now, 6th pick thereof, 105th overall. We end up with Jamison Crowder, the wide receiver out of Duke, another short stack receiver. He's 5'8", buck 85, so not a big guy. 5'8", a buck 85. That sound like anybody on the Redskins right now? It sounds like a whole lot of people on the Redskins. This was a head scratcher to me. Robbie, what do you think?
We've drafted basically our new kick return specialist and slot guy. I think it's the writing's on the wall for Andre Roberts. He's gonna be looking over his shoulder a lot. Yeah. A lot of people have actually been really praising this pick, saying he's a football player like you look for. He's not dynamic or anything, but he's shifty. He can make plays in the open field, and he's actually a pretty good returner. I've seen a couple of his highlights. He looks good at doing that. He makes good cuts. So I'll give it a dead right. I mean, it was not what we expected. It certainly went against our common theme so far of the draft of big, mean, and nasty football players. But
right.
I think he falls under Scott's philosophy of drafting football players and not the necessary intangibles that you look for.
Yeah, I hope so. When I saw the pick, I saw that he's 5'8", 185, and he runs I think a 4.56 40. That really made me wonder what was going on with the kid. And then you read deeper into the analysis and you watch some of the film, and I realized that the guy he's not going to win a track. Robert Griffin's going to beat him in a 40, hopping on one leg probably. But the guy is shifty and quick, which I think is a big benefit. He's probably, I would think, one of these guys that plays football faster than he's going to run in track shoes.
He definitely looks faster on film.
I think that's wholly underrated. People haven't played a lot of football. Robbie, you know this. But there is a massive, massive difference between being able to run a 40 and effectively move at top speed on a football field. It takes more than just the physical nature of it. It's a mental thing too. You have to be mentally quick enough to get your body going and knowing what you're doing fast enough to get up to top speed. And some people are good at that. Some people are not good at it. My assumption here is that the coaching staff and the scouts think that Mr. Crowder is one of those guys.
Yeah, and he's drawing pretty good comparisons to Antonio Brown, our very own Santana Moss, even Randall Cobb from the Packers. If he's anything like those guys, that'd be a good, a bonus. But
go ahead. Santana, he was a first-round draft pick. Santana was a legit track star early in his day and in college and whatnot, I believe. And plus, he did play fast. I think if Crowder, gets anywhere near what Santana Moss was in his heyday, he's made a heck of a lot of it out of a fourth-round pick. I also think that this probably means the end of Santana Moss as a Redskin, which for me is a very sad thing. You know, he's if there was a bright spot in this dreadful era of Redskin football, Santana Moss was certainly that bright spot, or at least one of a very few handful of them. And, you know, if this is it for him, I wish him the best of luck. I hope he's one of these guys who we always see around Redskin Park, you know, at the cookouts and the bake sales and whatever else there are. The Harvest Fest.
Harvest Fest.
Yeah. Because he's a great Redskin, and I'm going to be sad to see him go.
He'll probably have a media job somewhere.
Yeah, I would assume. I would think that too. But yeah, my Moss jersey, proudly worn every Sunday. Griffin collects dust in the closet. Well, moving right along, then we're still in round 4. We also ended up with the pick 13, so we had pick 6 and pick 13 in the 4th round. So this is 112 overall. We took Ari. Is it Quanjo?
Quanjo, I think.
Quanjo, guard out of Alabama, another guard. It sounds like he also struggles in pass protection, so I think that's true of Sheriff and Quanjo. So a little confusing there, but you definitely see the need in guard picks. Robbie, what's your take?
I see him as a poor man's Mike Upati.
He's a poor man's Mike Upati with the fact that he's a strong run blocker. He's good in the run game. He's physical. But pass pro, he still needs to work on. He's not as athletic as you would want, but that's because, you know, in Alabama, all they do is power running and play action. But one thing to note about him is he's had multiple surgeries on both of his knees, so that's a concern.
Yikes.
I'm going to say dead wrong just because I think there was better linemen on the board there. But
well, you know, the Patriots took
Trey Jackson.
Right at the pick, it was pick 111, I believe, is when the Patriots grabbed him. I think that Jackson was rated a little bit higher than Quandizio. You know, if the fans didn't know, by the way, this is the younger brother, I presume younger, of Cyrus Quandizio, who was selected by the Buffalo Bills, 2 years ago, I think, maybe 3?
Last year.
And, you know, and Cyrus hasn't exactly burned up the football field up there in Buffalo himself. I like the idea of drafting a guard. I noticed that this guy, Ari, is only 310 pounds, which, you know, is a lot. It's twice me, but it's not quite as much as I would have thought in terms of sheer bulk, considering that McLuhan is talking about, you know, 320 plus. You know, we can certainly use him. I think it's a plus that he played at Alabama. In the SEC, he's faced a lot of big-time defenses, and let's be honest, you know, the zone blocking scheme is becoming scarce in Redskins Park, I think. You know, and you know, Robbie, you just told us that, you know, Quandizio is more of a power blocking style, power run, and that's kind of the way we're going. Could you, for the benefit of the novices out there, because, you know, count me among them, can you tell us the difference from a technical standpoint between the power run game and the zone blocking system that we used under Mike Shanahan?
Yeah, zone scheme is very lateral. A lot of double teams, a lot of it's very assignment based and sticking to your zone. It's not, I got this guy in front of me, I'm blocking him. Most of the time, it's the guard working with the center working with the other guard, guard and tackle working together. It's very intricate and very. You have to communicate, because if you don't, then it's all blown to hell. It's very. I love the zone scheme. I played zone all throughout college at ODU, but it's good at picking up blitzes and pretty much very flexible in whatever the defense brings to you, but. Power schemes are very gap based. Like if I'm at left guard and we're running power, power to the left side, the left guard would just gap down to the A gap, which is the gap to his right next to the center, and whoever's in that gap he takes. If there's a guy on his outside shoulder, he leaves him alone. The left tackle would take him over and just drive him down the gap, I guess. And then you'd have the right guard pulling through to pick up whatever linebacker comes to him. It's very gap oriented, very physical downhill running. I wouldn't expect us to go completely away from the zone because it's still a very good system if it's run correctly. But I definitely would expect more power.
And I think what I'm hearing you say about the zone blocking system is in comparison to the power game, the entire line is moving laterally to their left or right, depending on the play call, and then the running back is going to look for a hole and make a cut back against the grain. Now, the running back in that case doesn't even have a particular hole he's supposed to hit, right? It's just what he sees is open. Is that correct?
The general, yeah, mostly he'll look, if it's like zone left, he'll look left first and look for the gap, but then most of the time there will be a cutback lane that the backside of the offensive line opens up for him. But really, yeah, I think running backs love zone, especially the ones that like to find the holes themselves and make plays. I think they enjoy the challenge of making holes instead of just, oh, there's no hole here because of the power play. I just got to get what I can. With zone, I think they love the freedom of it.
Yeah. Whereas in the power run game, what I remember from my days is the running back the play is gonna call for a specific gap for the running back to hit. On my high school team it was numbers not letters, but the play called maybe for running back to hit the A gap, and the fullback follows the guard, and then the running back follows the fullback, and we'll see how far we go. Then is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. They're kind of a slave to the assignment. You have to go through that hole because if you don't, then there's nothing else that's going to be open. So I think they enjoy that freedom of kind of making the play themselves.
So how is Alfred Morris going to fit in more of a power run game than the zone blocking system?
That's a good question. I think he's going to be fine. He excelled in the zone, but I think he's still very powerful and he can attack the whole, really strong. He doesn't go down with one guy. So I think he's going to be just fine, especially if Callahan gets our offensive line coached up and going strong. Then I think there's nothing to worry about.
Keep our fingers crossed for that. Awesome. Well, moving on then, I think we're down to the 5th round now. We picked 5th, so that's 141 overall. We took outside linebacker Martrell Spate out of Arkansas, 6 foot, 236. Once again, coverage isn't his strong suit, but it sounds like, I don't know. My thought here is, maybe to help out on special teams. I mean, it's hard to, I guess, for me to think about that many rotational guys at outside linebacker. What do you think?
Yeah,
Robbie?
I think we're getting into the special teams player now with the 5th round. Spate can obviously compete to be, one of the primary backups behind Perry Riley and Keenan Robinson. But we already have a pretty good special teams warrior with Adam Hayward.
Right. He should be coming back from injury.
Yeah, he will be. So I think we got a good football player with Spate. He's not. I'm going to give it a dead wrong just because of his measurables. I think he's a very physical player. If falls under what McLuhan's looking for in just overall good football player, not just the measurables. So I think we're going to have a good guy that'll compete his ass off in special teams and try to make a difference there.
I think this was the classic. Best player available. This is the guy that's number 1 on our board right now at this moment pick. I'm not sure we needed another outside linebacker necessarily. This guy has got almost the same exact measurables as Leonard Butcher. And so when I saw this, I immediately thought, okay, this guy is going to be a backup inside linebacker, maybe more of a 4-3 inside linebacker than a 3-4. Am I right?
Yeah, he'll be an inside linebacker for us. I don't think he'll play outside, not in the 3-4 at least. But yeah, he's just a solid football player overall. I've seen a little bit of his film. He's a hard hitter. He plays hard, full effort kind of guy, which is all you can ask for these kind of low round players.
So maybe some competition from Perry Riley.
Yeah, maybe.
You think,
Yeah, maybe. I also really like Will Compton that has behind him. I'd like to see him get a shot too. So there's going to be some deep competition at inside linebacker this summer.
Robbie, you criticized me for leaving Will Compton off my salary cap review last weekend. I remember. I haven't forgotten that, and I cried myself to sleep over that one. I hope y'all believe that. But no, I think Spate was the guy that I think it was Mike Mayock said it was one of his favorite picks. Am I thinking of that wrong? I think so.
Really?
He may have. Yeah, I don't quite remember.
This is a guy who's another one who's played in the SEC. Arkansas had a pretty good defense. They certainly faced quality offensive lines. So I think Spade has that going for him. I don't know how much coverage ability he has. Our linebackers were just god awful, horrible in coverage last year, just to the point of just embarrassment. Really and truly, I think Sean and I could line up there and maybe cover the tight ends better than those guys. Not really
Guaranteed.
I hate to do another diversion here because I've launched this twice now, but I'm going to do it anyway. But coverage. What went wrong last year with the linebackers and coverage? I remember how many games watching tight ends run just completely unmolested down the field by themselves. Just an embarrassment. What went wrong last year with the coverage of these linebackers or tight ends and running backs?
That's a great question for Jim Haslett, but but in my opinion, I think a lot of it was just guys weren't doing their job. I don't know how much. We were in zone pretty much most of the time. Our linebackers weren't in man that often, but especially in the red zone, we were just getting gashed by tight ends, and I'm not sure. It's I think just lack of talent and lack of focus.
I almost think that maybe we should have. I almost think we maybe should have been in man as opposed to zone. At least if it was zone, they could have identified their assignment and tried to stay with them for God's sakes, instead of looking like they were just totally clueless about where they were supposed to be.
Yeah, that would have worked for me too.
And we ought to call Jim Haslett and get him on the Hog Sty because he's got plenty of time on his hands now. Maybe he can do it.
Yeah, let's do it.
He should be so.
Maybe he can be our other football expert. He can join us every week, along with Robbie.
Yeah,
I'm sure he'd be thrilled.
Yeah, I think that's a downgrade in the expert.
I definitely take Robbie's opinion over Jim. Believe me.
I'm flattered.
All right, well, awesome. So moving on from Spate, then we have another one of those Seahawks picks. So we had in the 6th round, the 5th pick again, 181 overall. We took Kyshon Jarrett, strong safety out of Virginia Tech. Short, again. This guy's short. He's 5'10". He's like my height, 200 pounds. I guess this is just a developmental pick. I don't know, Robbie. You
it's definitely a developmental pick. He's a very solid special teams player. He's not a guy that's going to compete right away. They'll look for him to really make a difference on special teams, and he's a local guy, which is also a bonus. But in my opinion, I just kind of bow to Scott's greater judgment because he's proven to find decent corners in the late rounds, or corners and safeties. But I think he's he from what I've seen on film, he's very physical. He's very energetic, plays with a lot of intensity. Could be a good leader for us if he ever becomes a starter and makes plays for us. So I think you wouldn't count on anything big from him this year, but maybe year 2, year 3, he can become someone big for us.
So did you give us a dead right or dead wrong?
I'll give it.
Ooh, good point. And I was going to say, before you give us this grade, I think we're even now, right? We had dead right, wrong, right, wrong. What was Spate?
I gave him a dead wrong, I think.
Okay, so I think we're even. So I think this is a big pick for you. Dead right or dead wrong?
I give it a dead right. We needed.
Oh, thank God.
We needed some depth at safety. We need someone to develop, along with we got Philip Thomas already. So now we needed a true free safety, and I think this guy, he's actually pretty versatile, I think. So we can count on him to develop and be a rotational guy, if anything.
My thoughts on him, he is a little short at 5'9", 5'10". He ran a 4.5740, which clearly isn't elite cornerback level, but it's certainly good enough to play a free safety position. I have to think that because he's from Virginia Tech, number one, I'm sure some of the fans out there know all about this guy, but more importantly, I would imagine that the scouts know him very, very, very well. I have to think that because Virginia Tech is just down the road from the DC area, that they attended a whole lot of Virginia Tech games. But Robbie, tell us, how many scouts go to these games? Are there pro scouts at every college game in big time programs?
I would think so. I don't know how many would per se are there, but I think it's definitely easier for us to be at these local colleges. We just go right down the road to Virginia Tech, UVA, all these other Virginia schools. I think we definitely have our eyes on them since it's easier and we're right near them. But I think you pretty much can count on at least one scout being at most big time program games.
Yeah.
Just to watch and get a feel for them.
Yeah. I tend to trust this pick. I don't know anything about Jarrett in particular, but I tend to trust this pick just for that reason. And what we have in our safety position now is, thank goodness, we have two players as opposed to zero a month or two ago who can actually play the free safety position, which is a miracle. We haven't had a true free safety. We really didn't have one last year either. I don't know why this team has made it so difficult to find safeties over the years. I don't know if it's the curse of the late Sean Taylor, God rest his soul. But it has been so long since we've had a quality free safety. I can't remember another one other than Taylor over the years. And if we get a guy like this who can come in and be a competent safety, thank the Lord. Truly.
Yeah, it's been miss after miss. We had O.J. Atogwe before. What's his name? Madiu Williams. So yeah, hopefully this guy develops.
Those were dark days.
Hopefully this guy develops into someone we can count
on. We had Chris Horton there. Remember him? He was there for a cup of coffee. I think he had. His claim to fame was he had 3 interceptions in a game once, if I recall, and then we never heard from him ever again.
Yeah, it was against the Giants, I think, wasn't it?
I think so.
Or maybe, yeah.
So it's safety right now. Before we move on, though, safety right now, I guess I'm just trying to think about our current rotation. So at free safety, I guess we're looking at Goldson, Trenton Robinson, Jaron Johnson, and then Cromartie Smith. And then strong, is it Iannaco, Thomas, Davis, and then now Jarrett, right? So we've got quite the rotation of safeties. Hopefully we can find somebody that can actually play.
You have to think.
Go ahead, we're very young there, too.
Yeah. You have to think that, I guess, Golson and Johnson are the guys who are going to start, maybe.
Right.
But, I think we're sleeping on Iannaco. He was a fairly quality player. He's just been hurt, and now he's back. I wonder if he's going to be in the mix to be at least get playing time. And the other guy that has fascinated me for the entire year is Akeem Davis. And I don't think it's for any reason that I saw on when he was, a very rare occasion when he was actually on a defensive play. I got fascinated in him first with that NFL Network show, Undrafted, and I just found him interesting. But more than that, on the special teams, the guy was a beast.
Yeah, he's crazy.
Yeah, he was involved in it seemed like every single big hit and a good number of the tackles. He's got a lot of good aggression. It seems to me, I don't know if he can, cover anybody or not, but it seems like he would be a great in-the-box safety if he could develop and kind of learn the pro game more.
He's also got 4.3 speed, so that's also a bonus as well.
He's really that fast, 4.3 speed?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Wow.
We're going to have a lot of good competition. I can't imagine we're going to keep more than, 4 safeties probably on the active roster, maybe?
Yeah, 4 or 5.
Yeah, and
right, we're gonna have.
I know that's what I was about to say. Is we've got twice that many on the roster now, so there's going to be a lot of good competition, and You have to think that maybe only two of those guys have, the two guys that McGloin signed, in Colson and John Johnson, the only ones that have a position locked up. So we basically got, 5 or 6 guys fighting for 2 positions with that group?
Yeah.
Should
So
be
it looks
fun to
like.
watch.
Similarly, with our next pick, we're still in the 6th round. We picked back-to-back, so we picked 5 and then 6. We took Tevin Mitchell, who's actually Martrell Spate's buddy down there in Arkansas. Cornerback, 6 foot, 190. God, yeah, I mean, these last 3 picks, these are guys I don't know. I have to admit. I love the position pick, but Robbie,
I'm sure Robbie knows all about him.
Dead right or dead wrong.
I'm gonna,
I would hope so. We're down on you.
I'm gonna say dead wrong just because he's kind of an unknown. From what I've read up on him and seen, he had a really strong freshman season at Arkansas, and then the next year he struggled big time and got benched. So the next year, I think he did a little bit better, but he's kind of a wild card. I'm not sure. He's going to be just a competitor on special teams as it looks.
So wait a minute. Let me get this straight, just so I make sure I understand. If you get benched, that's not a good thing, right? Generally speaking.
No. I would say so.
And it doesn't bode well for your NFL future if you get benched. The positive that I think I see in this guy is he's got some speed to him. He ran a 4.44 40, which is good. That's fairly fast. He's got some size to him. He sort of fits the mold of what McGloin wants in terms of his measurables. A little taller. What'd you say? He's 190. He's got some size. He's not a beanpole, and he's got some speed. And he played at another guy in the SEC. So. I don't know if the SEC had the greatest passing offenses in the world last year, but nonetheless, he's used to big-time football. I think
the speed of it too.
Yeah, the speed of it. I think this is a case of the fans needing to trust Scott McGloin that he knows what he's doing and that this guy can come in and compete. I have to think that his end of the roster is probably special teams.
Yeah, I would assume so, because if you look at the cornerback situation, got D. Hall, obviously, Amerson, Tracy Porter, still a Redskin, Chris Culliver was signed in the offseason, and Breland, plus adding Mitchell to him. I mean,
a lot of guys.
That's 6 guys. We would have
and
to
I
lose
heard
some.
he and Martrell Spade hate each other, by the way. No, I'm just
kidding.
Really?
I
have no idea.
I was going to say, I called them buddies, so maybe you shouldn't have done that.
Sarcastically.
Yeah. You're assuming they're buddies. I have a feeling that Martrell Spate and Tevin Mitchell are going to be rooming in some little crappy apartment in Falls Church together,
right.
For the next, however long. I think Tevin Mitchell has a built-in roommate. So that I wish we could say more about him, but frankly, there's not much to say.
Yeah,
there's not. There's really
in
not.
a nutshell, he's got tools that you look for as a corner, but he's going to be a project, as it seems.
Similarly, I feel like the same is probably true of these next 2 guys. We're still in the 6th round. We also picked 11th. So, wow, we actually picked 5, 6, and 11, though this last pick, the 11 pick, we got from the Saints. So that was 187 overall. We took wide receiver Evan Spencer. Thank God we got a wide receiver that's over 6 foot tall. He's 6'2", 208 out of Ohio State. I really know nothing about him except he's got at least a little bit more of the ideal size.
Before we go to Robbie's dead right or dead wrong, can anybody out there name the connections that Evan Spencer has to the Redskins, other than the fact that he was drafted?
His brother Cole is the area scout for the Redskins.
Oh,
very good, Mr. Duncan. What do you think, dead right or dead wrong?
I'm going to give it a dead right because we found some size. We got
sounds dead sketchy.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. But he's got some size to him. He's got some speed to him. He's very mean, physical player. He didn't make as many plays as these other receivers at Ohio State, but he was very strong on special teams, and he got named the MVP of the season by his teammates. So that's pretty interesting. Speaks to his character, I would think. Being a special teams guy,
being named MVP. So I think we
Yeah.
got a special teams demon on us. I don't know about his wide receiver game. He'll maybe make some tough catches here and there, but he's a special teams demon.
Do either one of you guys?
Oh,
Do either one of you guys have his combine measurables in front of him? And the reason why I asked is, at 6'2", he's by far our biggest receiver. I'm sitting here having a vision of Evan Spencer on the corner fade pattern in the end zone, which is something that we haven't had a lot of success with for various reasons. But maybe that might be a role for him. I don't know what his vertical leap is. Evan Spencer. It seems to me this goes two ways. Either the area scout Cole Spencer really knows his brother well and is able to convince the Redskins that his brother has talent, and he just didn't get much of an opportunity considering he was with a whole bunch of other talented guys on the Ohio State team. Or you got it?
Yeah, I got it. He's a 4.35 low 40. The highest he ran was a 4.56. So I'm not sure how official this is, but next to it they list him, I guess, in the middle 4.45. So that's still pretty decent speed.
Yeah,
I'm going to make a raw assumption that he's probably a raw route runner. If he's got all these measurables and he's got that kind of speed and he's a 7th round pick, I'm guessing that he probably needs some pro coaching on route running.
Yeah, and he's actually pretty strong for a receiver. He did the bench test, 20 reps of 225, which is pretty good for a receiver. Vertical jump, he jumped 35 inches. Broad jump, 10 feet, 4 inches. 20-yard shuttle was a 4.29, and 3-cone drill was a 7.03. So he's got some good numbers.
Yes. Yeah.
So with those bench numbers and his size, he could do some good blocking.
Yes, that's another thing he's listed as being very good at is blocking. So that we got a physical guy that'll block for us and be a demon on special teams. I like it.
Like a crackback block coming from a big wide receiver.
Yep.
A guy with a 35-inch vertical leap is pretty strong for a football player. I come back to my corner fade pattern example with Evan Spencer. I think that would, that's what I would envision for him. And the guy played at Ohio State. What they have 3 quarterbacks last year.
Sounds like
there you go. But those quarterbacks, he had pro level quarterbacks. I mean, Cardale Jones last year in those last few games looked like an NFL quarterback already. So he's at least used to playing with pro talent. He's used to catching balls from quarterbacks that have, at least in the case of Jones, that have NFL quality arms. I like the size. He's bigger than Pierre Garçon. I always thought Pierre Garçon looks and plays bigger than he is. Because he's only 6 feet tall, but if you look at him, he looks like a monster to me.
Yeah.
But this guy is a little taller, so I have hope for Evan Spencer for no real reason other than what I said. And if you have to think that Cole Spencer may have his job on the line, don't you think?
God, before looking at this last pick, I was just looking at the receiver situations. We've got a lot of receivers too. And we just added 2 more. Yeah. So we got Jackson, Roberts, and Grant, and then obviously Garçon. We've got Ross and Lockett. Then we added 2 in this draft in what's it called, Crowder, and then Evan
Jerry
Spencer.
Rice.
So
that's
Jerry
a lot
Rice
of competition.
Jr.,
isn't he still signed to us?
He didn't make it, did he? Or did he? Am I getting that
I
wrong?
think he's a futures contract or something like that.
I think he's a futures thing.
It's something weird like that, yeah.
Just for anybody out there who's wondering what a futures contract is, it's basically, to put it in simple terms, an off-season contract, more or less. It for young players, it allows the teams to get the rights on these guys. They can come to Redskins Park and work out and participate. But that's about it. So that's kind of what a futures contract is. I think Rice has a futures contract. I think you're right.
I actually will admit I didn't really know that. So yeah, this is just interesting. We have a ton of money and a ton of competition in the receiver position. That's
Well,
just,
what do you think? Do you think we're going to keep more than
just
5 receivers this year? Because if we are, you know,
if someone's really good,
the 3 guys that I didn't mean to catch off, Robbie. Of the 3 guys that are obvious locks, Garcon, Jackson, and Roberts. Roberts more because the salary cap issue that we looked at last year. So we've got, how many, 5 or 6 fighting for 2, maybe 3 spots at most there.
Right. Yeah, if I had to guess what our receivers would be right now, I would say it would be Garcon, Jackson, Roberts, Ryan Grant, and then the next 2 would be Crowder and Spencer. Spencer would probably make it due to his special teams play.
I wonder about Ryan Grant. He did well in the off season last year in the mini camps. We heard good reports, and in the preseason he did well, but his measurables aren't very good. And before anybody out there says, Jerry Rice was slow, and please, don't bring that here, because Jerry Rice is an elite talent. He's the best wide receiver ever to play football. Art Monk aside. He is not a good example of a receiver without speed to make it, because that's just the idea of comparing Jerry Rice to anybody this side of Art Monk is criminal, I think. So I wonder if Ryan Grant is a guy who the fans kind of fell in love with, but ultimately may not have a future as a solid number 2, number 3 starter just because his measurables aren't really good.
That's possible. You never know.
Yeah.
At some level, he's got to be able to beat the corner, right?
Yeah. He's got to have a strong training camp to really solidify himself. But, yeah, it should be something to look for.
All right, well, geez, we've done it. We're at the last pick of the draft, the 2015 draft, round 7. We had the 5th pick. God, we had a lot of 5th picks in this draft. The 5th pick, 222nd overall. That's got to be lucky, right? We took center Austin Ryder out of South Florida, 6'3", 296, to add some competition, I guess, to Lichtensteiger and Larson, who are our current centers. What do you think? Do we have any reaction to this guy? I mean, this was the last pick that we had, super late. I know nothing about this.
I'm going to say dead right for sure. I like
nice.
Adding true center behind Lichtensteiger, because before that we've had all these guards and that have just been going to be the last second or the replacement just because they didn't have anyone that played true center, and it's these versatile guys that I didn't quite buy as a center. But now we have a real guy that can come in and replace him. I don't know if he will make the roster, being a 7th round pick, but I like that we're trying to find Lichtensteiger's replacement for when he moves on, because Lichtensteiger is old.
I was going to ask, what's his contract? Do we know when's his contract up?
I'm not sure about the contract, but I think he's like 32 right now.
Yeah, I think he is.
Right, so we do
need some youth. I told you guys this offline. I accidentally ran into Corey Lichtensteiger's brother at a football game last year, and it was, he was a good, nice guy. The only thing he said that was remotely interesting was that Lichtensteiger was looking to the center position as a way to extend his career. He thought that he said that his brother was never excited about playing guard, and that center is his true position, and that he's hoping because of the less pounding maybe that he can stick around for a few more years.
Yeah, centers actually last a pretty long time. There was what's that dude from the Ravens that just retired not too long ago? Matt Burke.
Yeah, he
was old.
He was forever.
The Bears had an old guy too. Was it Garza or Garcia? Or I can't remember, but
I think it was Garcia.
They had a guy that was maybe. And then there was the dude from the Colts that lasted for a really long time, Jeff Saturday. So, yeah, I mean, you never know with Lichtensteiger. Playing center, he could last a little bit longer, but I do like adding the youth. To give a little background on Ryder, I'm looking at John Kime's breakdown of him. Ryder actually entered college weighing 230 pounds, and then
he beefed up.
He actually gained 20 more pounds last season, so he was about 275 going into that year. So he's added good weight, and he's also got experience playing both power and zone blocking schemes. So that's kind of what we're looking for, I think.
If he can be a good backup center for us, I'm all for it. I'm sick and tired of seeing a center go out and we have to rearrange our entire offensive line, around the fact that we lose a center. So if this guy can be a good backup center, amen.
Yeah, and I'm reading Keim's article a little bit more. He brings up a good point. I'll quote him here. He says, "With 5 draft picks in the last 2 years among those vying for spots, I can't imagine this is good news for Josh Laribas, who got in shape last offseason but did not have a great preseason." So yeah, I think he's a guy to look for that will probably most likely get cut.
And the buffet restaurants in the Washington D.C. area are crying right now. with the loss of Josh Laribas, who was a major source of business. It injected lots and lots of money into the restaurant businesses in the DC area.
Well, we got pot roast.
Yeah, there you go. Now we have a guy named Pot Roast.
Lord giveth and taketh away.
says the restaurant owner.
Okay, well, so look, it looks like we came out pretty positive on this draft. I think we outnumbered dead rights to dead wrongs by 1 or 2, but there were definitely some mixed messages in there. I think we all agree it could have been better, but any final concluding thoughts on our first draft under McCoy?
Let's grade it. How about that?
Yeah, beautiful. Right. So like on an A to F scale?
Yeah, A to F. I'm going to give it a B+. I know I gave some of these picks a dead wrong, but I
That's because you only have the 2 choices.
I only have the 2 choices, but some of them I do actually kind of like the more I think about it. Like Matt Jones, he's a solid power runner that can easily come in and replace Alfred in case he goes out with injury. I've liked it. I give it a B+.
You want to waffle on your dead wrong,
Steve,
take Jones in, and give him a dead right?
No, I'm still going to stick to the dead right just because of the value of that pick.
Well, I thought you gave him a dead wrong. But
yeah, I did.
All right. I'm going to give the draft a solid B. I like what they did with Brandon Scherf and a couple of other of these guys. It seemed like some of the players at the back end are a little bit of a reach. I trust Scott McGloin that he knows what he's doing. He certainly knows better than I do, how these players play. And I like the positions they drafted, but some of them seem like reachers. And for that reason, I'm going to give them a B and not a higher grade. I will say that I noticed that, everybody's best friend Mel Kiper gave us an A- this year, which was the highest grade, tied for the highest grade he gave anybody, along with the Seahawks and the Steelers, who he also gave A- to. So in this particular case, Mr. Kiper, I thank you, and that you have not actually, criticized our draft this year. So I just thought I'd throw that out there.
I hope that's not a kiss of death, though.
It's not a Mike Greenberg kiss
seriously.
of death. Like Mike Greenberg does the kiss of death. It's not that. What do you think, Sean?
Yeah, I think Kiper might be adrift in a sea of Kool-Aid there, but overall, I'm going to give it a B. I thought, interestingly enough, the first pick of the draft is what our first pick of the draft, I should say, is what I always thought it was going to be. I always thought it was going to be Sheriff. Yeah, that was the name that started getting thrown around months ago. We've been talking about him forever.
He was the name that came up first, I think.
Exactly. He was like the first instinct for people saying, what will the Redskins draft? After that, though, almost every single draft move was a surprise to me. I think they were pretty good. I don't really like the Jones pick or the Crowder pick. Just mainly because with the Jones pick, we've already got that type of runner, and we had a void left, losing our third down back. I think we could have filled that. Like I said, Jay Ajayi was still on the board. I would have preferred going there. Crowder is just mainly the size thing. I get that he could help on special teams, and add some good competition. Other than that, I think it's pretty good. I don't mind taking a defensive end second. I think a lot of people complain about that. I don't mind that. I think he was pretty good. But yeah, mostly my reaction is just surprise. After that number 5 pick, everything was like, who is this again? But pretty good. I'm going to give Scott definitely a round of applause and the Hog Sty stamp of approval for me.
It occurred to me that I think Chris Thompson is probably cheering this draft as well because, we didn't bring any competition in for him. I don't know if Chris Thompson has got,
Exactly.
some naughty pictures of somebody on the staff or what, but it seems like that he's holding over somebody's head maybe, because he seems like he's on about his third or fourth wife with his team now. He's been hurt. He hasn't played. He looked good. He's looked bad. Somehow the guy has come out of the morass as the sole speed back we have. And the draft of Matt Jones certainly doesn't change that. I'd just like to throw in here, by the way, I'm looking at the list of undrafted free agents we signed. Most of them I have never heard of. I did notice that we signed the quarterback from Washington State, Connor Halliday, who, if we recall, was in Redskins Park for a visit, I believe, last week or the week before. So he's going to be another camp arm. Another name that stuck out with me was we brought a kicker in. I see, Ty Forbath isn't happy about that. Oh, here it is. Quentin Dunbar from Florida, the wide receiver from Florida. He was, if I recall, a prospect. And none of the rest of them I really heard of. We brought in an offensive tackle I see from Arkansas, Bray Cook.
Duke too.
Do you know anything about Bray Cook, Robbie?
I don't know much about him. I see that we also got a guy from Duke. He's a tackle, Jacoby Cofield. I think from what I remember, he's a pretty big guy. So we're still adding more beef to that O-line.
My goodness. We're going to have more tackles than we have safeties by the end of this.
Speaking of undrafted free agents, I got to give a shout out to a couple of my guys I played ball with that are going to be playing in training camp with different teams. You guys may remember from our last podcast, we talked about my quarterback, Taylor Heineke.
That's right.
Like
you were hoping for him.
Yeah,
I
was hoping and praying for it, but he like not long after the draft, like maybe 10, 15 minutes later, it got announced that he signed with the Vikings.
Oh wow!
A high priority free agent signing. It's like a 3-year deal or something like that. So they really loved him, and hopefully he can compete to be Teddy Bridgewater's backup. So I'm excited for him. We also had a receiver that got signed with the Packers. His name is Larry Pinkard. No one ever heard of him, but he's very talented. He's like 6'2". I'm not sure about his weight, but he's a very good pass catcher. Very reliable hands. He might be a sleeper for the Packers. But we also had our long snapper, believe it or not, Rick Lovato is his name. He signed with the Bears. So we've had a pretty good year for ODU guys getting into the NFL.
Wow, very nice.
One name that didn't get drafted, of course, is Lale Collins. He's got the murder charge out there, or the homicide incident. So, based on the CBA rules and whatnot, he cannot enter the 2016 draft. That is against the rules, and so he is forever an undrafted free agent. He will not be drafted again.
Man.
The ironic thing is if he had been drafted, he could have refused and ended up back in next year's draft. But because he didn't get drafted, he's stuck. So, you have to think that if the criminal event, the homicide gets cleared up, maybe Collins is a guy that everybody's going to be fighting over. I certainly wish him the best. He's not going to make the money that he would have made in the draft as a drafted player.
I'm really hoping we make this signing because with that, I would put him at right tackle and move Scherf to guard, and you would have arguably the best 2 offensive linemen in the draft.
Yeah, and for dirt cheap too. On top of that,
dirt cheap. I really hope this happens. I'd be very happy.
God, that's a good point. I hadn't even really thought about
as long as you bring that up, let me just briefly go into a little bit about rookie salaries. Since I know, I know everybody's excited, to hear about the numbers because it's the most exciting part of football.
Hey,
okay.
The numbers are important, Steve.
Very briefly, this is how it works. If you go backwards to 2010 and years prior, it was open season for rookie for rookie contracts. The teams were allowed to offer whatever they wanted within the constraints of the salary cap, and what that resulted in is in particular at the top of the draft, some of these rookies, Cam Newton, I think, was the last one, got really, really enormous contracts to the point where they were getting contracts that were some of the largest contracts in the history of football for their particular position groups. There were a couple of offensive linemen that got drafted that got just massive contracts. And so when the 2011 collective bargaining agreement came around, it came time to negotiate that, both the NFLPA and the NFL both decided that they wanted to reach a system or develop a system that allowed some sort of reasonable limits on rookie compensation. So what they did is they came up with something called the total rookie compensation pool, which is one of those veto legal terms defined in the CBA. And basically what that is that all players in the NFL on their rookie contracts are defined as the original contract signed without extensions. There is a total amount of money that all of them added together can't go over. In 2011, that number was $874.5 million. And so in the 2011 season, everybody on rookie contracts had to equal $874.5 million. That number goes up every year at the same pace as does the salary cap. And so what that means in terms of rookie compensation is that there's the year one rookie compensation pool, which in 2011 was $159 million. It's gone up since then. All of the 2015 rookies, if you add their contracts together, can't go over the number that is the $159 million plus the salary cap adjustment. Okay,
Gotcha.
And so in the case of, I mentioned earlier that Jameis Winston signed a $24 million contract. He has the top contract, and the NFL, through a formula, and the NFLPA through a formula that is not disclosed to the public, assigns a value to every single draft pick from Jameis Winston all the way down to Mr. Irrelevant, and says this is what these picks are worth. And so when you draft a series of picks, the team gets assigned the cap hit that was developed by this magic formula, okay? And so in the case of the Redskins, we had 10 picks. Each of those 10 picks have an assigned value to it, and the team can spend as a whole that number on all the draft picks. In the case of the Redskins, it was about $8.8 million. And what that means, we're not bound by the cap hit for each individual player. You can deviate from that if you want. The problem is it's the fixed total pool, right? We have $8.8 million. So if you give more to Brandon Scherf, that means you have to stiff, say Crowder. So it's arrived at a situation where the monetary contracts for rookies are almost fixed without argument. That's why they got Jameis Winston signed within 2 hours of his pick, because there's just no argument basically about the numbers. And so in the case of the Redskins, like I said, our rookie pool is about $8.8 million. Brandon Scherf's cap hit is going to be about $3.8 million. And if you think back 5 years ago, how much bigger a hit Scherf would be at number 5 than now, you maybe triple that. Going back to 2010.
Wow.
Well, think about Trent Williams. Trent Williams is at a cap hit of about $13 million. Was he a number 5, number 6 pick? I've forgotten. Yeah,
something like that. Here, let me find out.
So his cap hit's gone up a little bit in the years, but that's round numbers about 3 times less than what it was in 5 years ago. Preston Smith is going to have a cap hit of $970,000, and then the rest of them are all less than $600,000 cap hits for these guys. The contracts are all 4 years long. Every rookie contract for a drafted rookie is 4 years. The undrafted free agents all get 3-year contracts. Their bonuses and their contracts go into this total rookie compensation pool also. However, their bonuses that they get are fixed by the CBA. They cannot be awarded a gigantic bonus no matter what the team wants to do. I think the number this year is something like $89,000. I may be off a little bit, but I think it's $89,000 is the max bonus that any of those guys can get. So that is how rookie contracts work. and that's the amount that there's going to be. The salary cap this year for the NFL is 143,280,000. You have to add into that a rollover cap, and then there's every team has a little bit of adjustments. In the case of the Redskins, we only had 108,000 in rollover. We had adjustments added in of about 3.2 million. So the Redskins salary cap this year was $146,591,745. Those stats are courtesy of Spotrac.com again. Right now, with the rule of 51, we are at $132 million. And that's not including, the dead money that's going to come in. So at the end of the day, we're going to have to make a move or two to get all 8.8 million under the cap, but I think that is easily done. We don't. Yeah, it's not.
Bad,
we
though.
don't have room to sign any big time free agents, but I think at this point that's not going to happen anyway. So that is rookie contracts.
Right.
I'd also like to add into this that all the first rounders have an automatic team option for a 5th year, and fans out there will notice that the team signed Robert Griffin's option this week rather, and that option is the CBA mandated option that all first rounders have. So we have the same option on Brandon Scherf. It's going to work the same way. But here's how it works. This option is only guaranteed for injury up until the time that the 5th year league year starts. The league year, it's kind of like a tax year. Like the federal government has a tax year of 1 January to 1 January. The federal government's fiscal year is from October 1st to September 30th. The NFL's year is from March to March. And so because we signed the option, Robert Griffin's salary is guaranteed only for injury through March of next year. After March, if he's still on the roster and he's still healthy, at that point, then the contract, the option becomes fully guaranteed, meaning guaranteed for skill, injury, or salary cap terms. At that point, we're stuck with it. Go ahead, Sean. You have a question?
Yeah, I was going to say, can you explain the philosophy of that real quick to me? Why is the salary guaranteed only for injury?
Okay, there is a philosophy to it. It's that in the prior CBA, all the first-year contracts, the rookie contracts for the first rounders were 5-year contracts. And the NFLPA wants these guys to be released from their rookie contract earlier so they can go sign bigger contracts for the second round. And so the NFLPA was very interested in getting everybody on a 4-year contract to allow them to make more money later. The NFL teams say, wait a minute, we invested a lot of energy into these first-round picks. We want to have at least the first rounders under our control. So they arrived at basically a compromise scenario where the team will have an option on the first rounders only. Now the option amount, this is the compromise part, the option amount is set at essentially the transition tag level. There's the franchise tag, as we all know. We wasted our franchise tag on Fred Davis Esquire, a couple years ago. The Robert Griffin's option is set at $16 million, which is the transition tag level for quarterbacks, approximately for 2016. So it's a way to answer the question is that the purpose of the option is to give NFL teams a way to control their first-round picks that they want to control, while at the same time setting some of them free, which makes the NFLPA happy. That's why the thing about injury versus fully guaranteed, it protects the teams. Less of a guarantee is better for the team. So if Robert Griffin blows out a knee, in some point during week 1 and week 16, hopefully the playoffs, who knows, and he can't play next year. We're not talking about a sprained ankle here. We're not talking about, here his thumb. We're talking about catastrophic injury that would cause him to fail the team physical at the beginning of the team year or the league year. If it gets to that point, it is the guarantee, the salary is guaranteed. That's how it works. It's basically a way for the team to control Robert Griffin for another year, which certainly I think is a good thing. The last thing I'll say on it is I think what we'll see is the team be more cautious with Griffin in terms of the play calling.
Mm-hmm.
I think they'll instruct him to be more cautious in his style of playing, because what they don't want is for him to suffer another catastrophic injury, and then they're going to be stuck with his salary without him actually playing next year.
Yeah, I mean, if it's not going well, I could see them benching him early just to protect themselves
exactly
from
right.
that.
Yeah. Hopefully that made sense.
Yeah, no, it definitely did. As always, the numbers are always fascinating to me. There's so much interesting interplay between the Players Association, the NFL, the players themselves, etc. It's complicated stuff, but it's interesting.
It is a business,
Yeah.
folks, first.
Well, on that note, I think we'll leave it there. You have just listened to the Redskins Hog Sty post pre-draft special. In keeping with Alex's suggestion that every show be a special. So hopefully that was interesting and informative, and we'll definitely see you next week. This is the Hog Sty, your absolutely unofficial leading source for all things Redskins and NFL. Make sure you follow us on those social medias, and we will see you next time. Thank you.